The boardroom fell silent when Marcus told me to focus on my kids instead of my career, but 3 years later, when Forbes announced my company's $347 million acquisition, while his firm declared bankruptcy, that silence turned into the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. What he didn't know was that dismissing me would become the most expensive mistake of his professional life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The mahogany conference table stretched before me like a battlefield, its surface so polished I could see my own reflection staring back with determined eyes. The quarterly review meeting had been scheduled for 2 o'clock sharp, and I'd arrived 15 minutes early, clutching a leather portfolio containing 18 months of meticulous research, market analysis, and what I knew would be the breakthrough strategy that could revolutionize our entire digital marketing approach. I smoothed my navy blazer and checked my notes one final time. The presentation was flawless. Every slide had been crafted with surgical precision, every data point verified 3 times over. The competitive analysis alone had taken me 6 weeks of late nights after Emma and Sophie were finally asleep, working by the glow of my laptop screen at the kitchen table while my husband David handled bedtime routines. The other executives began filing in slowly. Patricia Chen from legal, always punctual, nodded at me with professional courtesy. James Morrison from finance barely glanced up from his phone, already deep in conversation about golf weekend plans. Then came Sarah Williams from operations, coffee in hand, looking as exhausted as I felt most mornings juggling spreadsheets and school pickup schedules. Marcus Sterling entered last, as he always did. His presence commanded attention in that effortless way that came from 15 years of corner office privilege. Silver-haired, impeccably dressed, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who'd never had to prove his dedication by working twice as hard for half the recognition. He'd built Sterling & Associates from a small consultancy into a mid-tier digital marketing firm, and every decision flowed through his desk like a tributary feeding into an ocean. I watched him settle into his chair at the head of the table, adjusting his platinum cufflinks with the same methodical precision he applied to everything else. Marcus was old school in the most frustrating ways. He believed in FaceTime over results, in loud voices over clear thinking, in the kind of aggressive networking that happened on golf courses and in cigar bars where conversations about million-dollar deals mixed with casual misogyny disguised as friendly banter. "Let's begin," Marcus announced, his voice carrying that particular tone of authority that brooked no disagreement. "We're here to discuss strategic initiatives for the upcoming fiscal year. I want to hear bold ideas, game-changing concepts that will set us apart from our competitors." This was my moment. I'd been preparing for this opportunity for months, ever since I'd noticed the glaring gap in our social commerce strategy. While our competitors were scrambling to understand the intersection of artificial intelligence and consumer behavior, I'd been quietly building a framework that could position Sterling & Associates as the definitive leader in predictive marketing automation. I opened my portfolio and cleared my throat. "Marcus, I'd like to present a comprehensive strategy for integrating AI-driven consumer behavior analysis with our existing client campaigns. The market research indicates we could increase client ROI by up to 47%, while reducing campaign development time by 60%. His eyebrows lifted slightly, not with interest, but with something that looked dangerously close to amusement. "Interesting, Rachel. But before we dive into complex technical discussions, I want to address something that's been concerning me about your role here." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. I felt Sarah shift uncomfortably in her chair beside me, while James finally looked up from his phone with the kind of sudden attention that comes when you sense drama brewing. Marcus leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled in front of him like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. "You've been with us for 6 years now, and in that time you've had 2 children. Wonderful blessings, I'm sure. But I've noticed your priorities shifting, and frankly, I'm questioning whether your heart is still in this business." My stomach dropped, but I maintained my composure. My performance metrics would suggest otherwise. I've exceeded my targets for 18 consecutive months, brought in 3 major accounts this quarter alone, and my client retention rate is the highest in the company. "Numbers are one thing," Marcus continued, waving my achievements away like smoke. But leadership requires total commitment. It requires being available when clients need you, staying late when projects demand it, traveling at a moment's notice. Can you honestly tell me that your family obligations aren't affecting your ability to give this company everything it deserves? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Around the table, my colleagues studied their coffee cups and legal pads with sudden fascination. No one wanted to witness what was happening, but no one was brave enough to intervene either. I thought about the previous Thursday when Emma had been sick with strep throat, and I'd spent the entire day managing a crisis for our biggest client from the pediatrician's waiting room, typing urgent emails between temperature checks and medication schedules. I thought about the weekend I'd spent building the presentation that was now sitting ignored in front of me, while David took the girls to soccer practice and birthday parties so I could have uninterrupted time to work. My family motivates me to excel, not the opposite, I said carefully. I've never missed a deadline, never let a client down, never failed to deliver results. If you're questioning my commitment based on my personal life, rather than my professional performance, then we have a fundamental disagreement about what constitutes valuable contribution to this company. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Marcus's expression hardened. This isn't about fairness, Rachel, it's about reality. This business is unforgiving. Our clients expect partners who can be completely dedicated to their success. When you're worried about daycare pickup times and parent-teacher conferences, you can't give them the attention they deserve. Patricia Chen finally spoke up, her voice carefully neutral. Marcus, Rachel's billable hours consistently exceed company requirements, and her client satisfaction scores are exemplary. I'm not sure I understand the basis for these concerns. He turned his attention to Patricia with visible irritation. The basis is leadership instinct, something that can't be measured in spreadsheets. I've built this company by recognizing talent and commitment when I see it. Rachel is undoubtedly skilled, but skilled isn't enough anymore. We need warriors, not part-time practitioners. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. Part-time practitioner. As if the 60-hour weeks, the strategic innovations, the revenue I generated for this company somehow counted less, because I also happened to pack school lunches and attend dance recitals. I closed my portfolio slowly, the presentation I'd crafted with such care suddenly feeling like evidence of my own naivete. So what exactly are you suggesting? Marcus straightened his tie, the gesture of a man preparing to deliver what he considered tough but necessary medicine. I'm suggesting that you take some time to really think about what you want. Maybe consider a role that's more compatible with your current life phase. Something in account management, perhaps. Less pressure, more predictable hours. You could focus on your kids without the stress of carrying major strategic responsibilities. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the air conditioning humming, the distant sound of phones ringing in the outer office, the scratch of James's pen against his notepad as he pretended to take important notes about nothing. Something crystallized in my mind in that moment. Not anger, though that would come later. Not hurt, though that was certainly present. Instead, it was clarity. Absolute, diamond-sharp clarity about exactly who Marcus Sterling was and what this company valued. I see, I said quietly. So in your professional opinion, being a mother makes me inherently less capable of strategic thinking, client management, and business development. Don't twist my words, Marcus replied, but there was defensive edge to his voice now. I'm talking about practical limitations. Time, energy, focus. These are finite resources. And when they're divided, something has to give. I stood up slowly, gathering my materials with deliberate calm. You're absolutely right about resources being finite, Marcus. And I think I've been investing mine in the wrong place. His brow furrowed, clearly not expecting this response. What's that supposed to mean? It means I understand your position perfectly clearly. You believe that my value to this company is limited by my personal circumstances rather than enhanced by my professional capabilities. You've made your priorities clear, and I respect that clarity. Sarah was staring at me with something approaching admiration, while Patricia had put down her pen entirely and was watching the exchange with obvious fascination. James had stopped pretending to take notes and was now openly gawking. I reached the door before turning back one final time. For what it's worth, Marcus, that AI integration strategy I wanted to present, it would have differentiated us from every competitor in our market segment. But you're right about focus being important. I should probably concentrate my strategic thinking somewhere it's actually valued. The door closed behind me with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam would have been. I walked past my assistant Jennifer's desk, past the motivational posters about teamwork and excellence, past the awards wall showcasing Sterling and Associates' various industry recognitions, many of which prominently featured campaigns I'd spearheaded. The familiar hallway suddenly felt foreign, like a place I was seeing clearly for the first time. In my office, I sat down at my desk and stared at my computer screen for several long minutes. The cursor blinked steadily in the search bar, patient and waiting. Almost without conscious thought, I typed 4 words: Small Business Incorporation Process. That afternoon, I picked up Emma and Sophie from school like always. We went through our usual routine homework at the kitchen table, snacks and conversation about their day, dinner preparation while they played in the backyard. David came home from his accounting firm with the same tired but content expression he wore most evenings, kissed me hello, and asked about my day. Interesting, I said, stirring pasta sauce and considering how much to share. I had a revelation about my career trajectory. He paused in the middle of loosening his tie. Good revelation or bad revelation? Expensive revelation, I replied, for someone else. That night, after the girls were asleep, and David was reviewing client files in his home office, I opened my laptop and began researching business licenses, LLC formation procedures, and initial startup costs. I sketched out a rough business plan on the back of Sophie's coloring page, outlining a consulting firm that specialized in AI-driven marketing automation for small and medium-sized businesses. The more I wrote, the clearer it became. Marcus had been right about one thing. Focus was indeed important. I'd been focusing on trying to prove my worth to people who were fundamentally incapable of recognizing it. Now it was time to focus on building something where that recognition wouldn't be necessary, because the results would speak for themselves. I pulled up my contact list and began making mental notes about former colleagues who'd left Sterling and Associates for various reasons over the years. Talented people who'd been frustrated by the company's inability to evolve, who'd felt undervalued or overlooked, who'd expressed interest in working for an organization that prioritized innovation over politics. By midnight, I had a business name, Catalyst Strategies. By 1 a.m, I had a rough client acquisition plan. By 2, I had a financial projection that made my pulse quicken with excitement rather than anxiety. I closed the laptop and went to check on the girls, as I did every night. Emma was sprawled across her bed with her favorite stuffed elephant, completely at peace. Sophie had kicked off her covers and was curled up like a tiny question mark, dark hair spread across her pillow like silk. Standing in their doorway, I felt something shift inside my chest. Marcus had positioned my children as obstacles to my professional success, as complications that diminished my value as a strategic thinker. But looking at them now, I realized he'd gotten it exactly backwards. They weren't limitations on my potential. They were the reason I was finally ready to pursue it fully. The next morning, I dressed with particular care. Navy suit, the good jewelry, the confidence that comes from having made a decision that aligns with your deepest values. I arrived at the office early and spent an hour organizing my client files, documenting ongoing projects, and creating detailed handover notes for whoever would inherit my accounts. Jennifer arrived with her usual cheerful greeting and coffee from the lobby cart. "Morning, Rachel. How did the presentation go yesterday?" "Educational," I replied, continuing to type. "Very educational." Marcus didn't emerge from his office until nearly 10, and when he did, his expression was carefully neutral. Professional. As if our conversation the previous day had been nothing more than a routine performance review. "Rachel," he called out as he passed my office door, "could I see you for a moment?" I saved my document and followed him into his corner office with its view of the city skyline and its wall of framed photographs showing Marcus with various industry luminaries and political figures. He gestured to the chair across from his desk, the same one where I'd sat countless times over the past 6 years, discussing strategies, campaigns, and company objectives. "I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday," he began, settling into his executive chair with its high back and leather upholstery. "I may have come across more harshly than I intended. The last thing I want is for you to feel unappreciated." I waited, saying nothing. "The truth is, you're a valuable member of this team," he continued. "Your skills are undeniable. But I stand by my concerns about work-life balance and its impact on long-term career growth. However, I don't want to lose you entirely. What if we restructured your role to better accommodate your current priorities?" The offer hung between us like a bridge he was hoping I'd cross back to safety, back to the familiar territory of compromise and grateful acceptance of diminished expectations. "What kind of restructuring did you have in mind?" I asked. "Senior account manager," he said promptly. "Substantial client portfolio, but more manageable scope. Fewer late nights, less travel, stable hours. You'd still be doing strategic work, just with more reasonable boundaries. And naturally, we'd adjust your compensation to reflect the reduced responsibilities. Reduced responsibilities. Adjusted compensation. Reasonable boundaries." I looked at Marcus Sterling, really looked at him, and saw him clearly for perhaps the first time since I'd started working for him. He wasn't evil or malicious. He was simply a man who'd built his understanding of professional success around a model that had no room for people like me. In his world, dedication meant physical presence, commitment meant availability at all costs, and leadership required the kind of single-minded focus that was only possible when someone else handled all the complexities of daily life. "That's a generous offer," I said finally, "but I'm going to have to decline." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Rachel, I hope you're not making an emotional decision here. Take some time to think about it. Talk it over with David. I'm sure when you consider the practical benefits of a more balanced role, you'll see that this is actually an opportunity." I smiled, and for the first time in our conversation, it was completely genuine. "You're absolutely right that this is an opportunity, Marcus. Just not the one you think it is." I walked out of Marcus's office that morning with my resignation letter in my hand, and a clarity that felt like breathing pure oxygen after years underwater. The document was simple, professional, and contained no hint of the revolution brewing beneath its polite language. 2 weeks' notice. Effective immediately. Gratitude for opportunities provided. Commitment to smooth transition of responsibilities. Jennifer looked up from her computer with surprise when I handed her the sealed envelope. "Should I schedule this for Marcus's afternoon review pile?" "Actually, could you deliver it now? It's time-sensitive." She glanced at the formal letterhead visible through the envelope, and her expression shifted to understanding. In the 6 years I'd worked at Sterling & Associates, Jennifer had witnessed every late-night crisis call, every weekend emergency, every moment when my dedication to this company had required sacrificing time with my family. She'd also seen how those sacrifices were received, acknowledged, and ultimately dismissed. "Of course," she said quietly. "And, Rachel, whatever you're planning next, they're lucky to have you." I spent the rest of that morning methodically extracting my professional life from Sterling & Associates. Client contact information was transferred to my personal phone. Strategic frameworks I'd developed were saved to external drives. 6 years of relationship building, market research, and innovative thinking were carefully documented and preserved. I wasn't stealing proprietary information, but I was ensuring that my intellectual contributions wouldn't disappear into the company's institutional memory without trace. Marcus emerged from his office around noon, resignation letter in hand, his expression cycling through disbelief, frustration, and something that might have been panic. "Rachel, this is completely unnecessary. We can work something out. Don't let pride make this decision for you." "This isn't about pride," I replied, continuing to pack my personal items into boxes. "It's about recognizing when a situation has reached its natural conclusion." "Think about your family," he pressed. "You have responsibilities, a mortgage, college funds to consider. Walking away from a stable income because of one difficult conversation isn't rational." The irony was breathtaking. The same man who'd questioned my commitment because of my family was now using them as emotional leverage to keep me trapped in a situation that undervalued everything I brought to the table. "You're absolutely right about my responsibilities," I said, sealing the last box with tape, "which is exactly why I need to pursue opportunities that recognize my actual worth." By Friday afternoon, I was officially unemployed for the first time since college. David had taken the news with characteristic calm, trusting my judgment even when I couldn't fully explain the certainty I felt about what came next. The girls saw moving boxes in the garage and assumed we were preparing for another adventure, which wasn't entirely wrong. That weekend, I transformed our dining room into a command center. Legal documents spread across one end of the table, business plan drafts covered the other, and in between sat my laptop surrounded by coffee cups and scratch paper covered with financial projections. I had reached out to 3 former Sterling & Associates colleagues who'd left for various reasons over the past 2 years, and by Sunday evening, I had my first 2 potential business partners. Miranda Chen had been Sterling's creative director until Marcus decided her maternity leave indicated, quote, shifting priorities. She'd been freelancing successfully ever since, building a client base of small businesses who appreciated her ability to create compelling brand narratives without the overhead of a large agency. When I called her with my proposition, her response was immediate and enthusiastic. "I've been waiting for someone to build something better," she said. "Count me in." Tom Rodriguez had lasted 3 years at Sterling before realizing that his innovative approach to data analytics was being consistently overlooked in favor of Marcus's preference for proven methodologies. He'd joined a tech startup as their marketing director, but our conversation revealed he was hungry for the kind of strategic autonomy that only came with building something from scratch. "You know what the market needs," Tom told me during our coffee meeting Monday morning. "And you know how to deliver it. That combination is rare." By Wednesday, Catalyst Strategies LLC was officially registered with the state. By Friday, we had our first client. Elena Vasquez owned a chain of 3 boutique fitness studios, specializing in pre- and postnatal wellness programs. She'd approached Sterling & Associates 6 months earlier, seeking help with digital marketing strategy, only to be told her business was, quote, too niche, and her budget too modest for their consideration. When Miranda mentioned our new venture, Elena was immediately interested. 3 days later, I received a call from Marcus Sterling himself. His voice sounded older, more uncertain than I remembered, lacking the confident authority that had once intimidated me into silence. "Rachel, I heard about the Morrison offer. Congratulations on building something remarkable. I also heard you declined, which frankly surprises me." I waited for him to continue, curious about his perspective but no longer concerned about his approval. "I wanted to call because I owe you an apology. I was wrong about your potential, wrong about your priorities, and wrong about what constituted valuable contribution to strategic marketing. You've proven that my assumptions were not just incorrect but expensive." The admission hung between us for several moments before he continued. "Sterling & Associates is closing next month. We couldn't adapt to market changes, couldn't compete with firms like yours that understood client needs at a deeper level. My approach to leadership became a liability rather than an asset." I felt no satisfaction in his admission, only a quiet sadness for the waste of talent and opportunity that resulted from rigid thinking and institutional blindness. "I'm sorry to hear that, Marcus. There were talented people at Sterling who deserved better outcomes." "Indeed. And they might have had them if I'd recognized talent and vision when they were sitting right in front of me." After we ended the call, I sat in my office looking out at the city skyline, thinking about the journey that had brought me from that humiliating conference room confrontation to this moment of unprecedented professional success. The numbers were staggering. Catalyst Strategies valued at nearly $400 million, my personal net worth exceeding Marcus's by more than $100 million. A client roster that included some of the most innovative companies in their respective industries. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was the proof that excellence could be achieved without compromising authenticity, that success could be built on foundations of mutual respect and shared values, and that sometimes the most powerful response to being underestimated was simply to build something so impressive that the underestimation became historically irrelevant. That night, I arrived home to find Emma and Sophie working on a school project about successful businesswomen, their research materials spread across the dining room table, where I'd first drafted the business plan for Catalyst Strategies. They looked up as I entered, excited to share their discoveries about female entrepreneurs who'd overcome obstacles to build influential companies. "Mom," Sophie announced proudly, "we're writing about you for our presentation." Mrs. Rodriguez said we could choose any successful businesswoman, and Emma said, "You count because you're successful, and you're a woman, and you're a mom." Emma nodded enthusiastically. We found the Forbes article online, and Tom sent us pictures from the office, and Dad told us about the company being worth lots of money. But the best part is that you didn't have to move far away or work all the time like some other business people do. Looking at my daughters, I realized they'd understood something that had taken me years to learn. Success wasn't about choosing between professional achievement and personal fulfillment. It was about creating lives that honored both ambitions simultaneously, building careers that enhanced rather than competed with the relationships and values that mattered most. 3 years after Marcus Sterling told me to focus on my kids instead of my career, I'd done exactly that. I'd focused on building a future worthy of their potential, creating a company that proved excellence and humanity weren't mutually exclusive, and demonstrating that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to accept limitations that others try to impose on your vision of what's possible. The next morning, I would wake up as the founder and CEO of a company worth nearly $400 million, surrounded by a team that shared my commitment to strategic innovation and authentic client relationships. Marcus Sterling would wake up facing the dissolution of a company that couldn't adapt to changing market demands because it had never learned to value the very qualities that were reshaping the industry. But that evening, I was simply a mother helping her daughters with homework, proud that they were growing up in a world where their potential would be recognized and celebrated, rather than questioned and constrained. The greatest victory wasn't proving Marcus wrong about my capabilities. It was ensuring that Emma and Sophie would never have to. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.